If you've been listening to this podcast or following me for any amount of time, you've likely heard me talk about messaging. But in this episode, we're not talking about messaging. We're showing it live in action and how it's developed over a year to help a student go from $0 to $10,000 a month. So keep listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we have a really interesting and awesome interview for you guys. As you know, I talk a lot about messaging. It's our thing. It's what the Video 4X program is all about. But one of the things that most people don't realize is that it takes a while sometimes to figure out your messaging. It's not an instant thing. And sometimes we get people who go into the Video 4X program who are like, I'm going to figure it out in the next 2 weeks. And you don't realize that it takes an evolution. When you look at my journey, I started selling real estate videos to real estate agents and ended up to where I am today. However, when you find that alignment, things can happen fast, and today's guest experienced exactly that and went from 0 to 7K a month in just 7 days, and then to 10K a month within 2 months. So today we have none other than Beverley Simpson. Beverley, welcome to the call.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
I am so excited to talk about your journey because I think there's so many amazing lessons in your journey and things that I talk about, but it's going to be so refreshing and nice for my audience to hear, that version of it through a different perspective. So to give everyone context for the interview, can you just tell everyone a little bit about what it is that you do?
Sure. Well, now what I do is I help personal trainers and physical therapists essentially master their messaging so that they can create profitable products and get it online and actually start making money online.
And what were you doing before you got into that?
Before, I was helping moms lose the weight that they want without dieting.
Yeah. Okay, great. So you actually enrolled in the Video 4X and the mentorship level year and a half ago-ish, somewhere along those lines. Is that correct?
February 20, was it 2019?
I think so.
No, it was 28. I don't know. It was in February.
We know the date. We just
together.
Okay, great. So what I want you to talk about a little bit is when we first started going through the messaging and figuring out how do we, because at that time you were helping moms lose weight. So what was the experience for you? Like, you understood thought reversals, you understood unique mechanisms, struggling avatar, all of this stuff. What was it like to kind of go through the process in the beginning for you? And what were like some of the biggest hurdles you had to go through?
Okay, great. I love this question. So first of all, I just want to say, just for a little bit of context, I want to take it all the way back because I have known you. I've known you now from when I purchased BBD, because I purchased BBD through you.
Right.
So first phone calls before we even got to the Video 4X effect is I said to you, because my background was that I was a fitness manager. I was a fitness manager for Crunch in Manhattan, and I was actually a player coach. So I was running 5 facilities at the time that I met you. Mm-hmm. And I had just had my second baby. So now I was moving into the online space, right? So this is almost 3.5 years ago. And one of our first conversations was, what do I do? Because this is my audience. My audience is only personal trainers and I don't have moms. And you and I had this conversation and you had said to me, it sounds a little bit like you're just unclear onto what it is that you want to do. So make a decision. So I said, great, I'm going to make a decision. And I did. And I picked moms. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I had picked moms because I had this belief that if I can't prove that I've done it online, then I can't do what I want to do what I'm clearly called to do.
Right.
which is teach selling and marketing to personal trainers, not recognizing that I can transition my skills that I had been working on for 3 years, 5 years, and just move those online.
Right.
Instead, I was operating from this belief that, oh no, I have to prove that I can do it online.
Yeah.
First, right? And so then we started working together with the video Forex effect, and we started, working on the thought reversals and working on the content. And I think one of the biggest hurdles, back to your question, for me was that, well, I had two, right? So one was that I was so attached to getting it right, which is clear, like from the first time that we first had this conversation, which is I was so attached to getting it right. And I think that it also came from this victim mentality place where I was feeling like I'm doing all the right things and nothing's working. Clearly, nothing's working. And so coming to you, it was this sense of like, I know how to do it,
right.
but it's not working. And so I think that part of the biggest hurdles was getting detached from the outcomes, which, listen, we were just talking about this yesterday. It's not a perfect, like, I've arrived. We're human. It's always going to happen. But right at the beginning, it was just such a huge sense of attachment to getting it right. And for what? To prove that I could do it? To who?
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things that I really had to just let go of. And what happens to me too is that I'm relentless. That's one way to describe me, is that I will literally just say, okay, go. I will go and I will run. But what happens is that I work so hard on something. Not only do I get attached to the outcome, I'm also attached in the process, in the sense that it almost becomes precious. Like the copy or the offer that we were coming up with, like it was becoming more important to me. And what I recognized was that I was making my offer and my messaging about me and not about the person that I was trying to help and serve.
Yeah. And there's so many valuable lessons in what you just kind of went through. And it's a great reminder for me from when you actually started working with personal trainers and then you decided to move in to help moms and everything. But I remember, and that's kind of like been a recurring theme of your journey, is just like, it has to be a certain way. This is what it is. And if it does not this way, then it means X, Y, and Z. And I have to tell you, the first thing, and everyone listening, the first thing with messaging is first of all, you got to make a decision where to go. You can't be wishy-washy, whatever. And you did do that, Beverley, but you also can't live and create from a version of reality that you made up in your head, because you have no idea what's going to end up. And how many times have we said, this is the way it's going to be, and it actually worked out? Like almost never. Like our life, we look back, has almost never been, this is the way it's going to be. This is what I'm working towards. And it worked out perfectly the way we envisioned it. Right?
Right. And
so when we look back at that and we started to work on your messaging, it's so funny now too, because I remember we would put stuff out there, and this is what I love about you is you did what you were told. Like, you're like, I'm asking for advice, and you go and you do it. And you would go and do it and be like, I didn't have the results I want. So we would adjust, we would change it. And eventually we obviously found it. But you have to go through those moments with the messaging of testing it, tweaking it, getting back up, coming back up and seeing what happened. But if I was to ask you, what do you think the problem was the first 6 months of, because things seemed to be working, the messaging seemed to be making sense, but in your opinion, what was going on the first 6 months of implementing everything where the results weren't as high as you wanted them to be?
I think that one of the things that I did, because I've often reflected on this, right? Now that I recognize and know that I am powerful in terms of marketing, and I really do believe that if you get the messaging right and you're able to communicate the perceived value of the offer and make that be 10 times greater than what you're asking the investment for, then you're going to hit it. Someone is going to invest, right? I mean, right. If you literally, people can sell rocks right now. If you go look up rocks on Amazon, people are buying it. So, they are, creating a reason to purchase rock. So I think that was one of the biggest things that perhaps or was missing for me is in the sense that he's right. If Brandon told me to do something, I was doing it, not for the sake of his approval for the record, but just because I really wanted to win. And I know that even though I was attached to outcomes, I definitely am an analytical person. And I do know that the numbers will speak and will tell me what to look at. And so in order to get that, and here's the thing too, with messaging, and Brandon taught me this, is that you're never going to finish with what you started with, but you're never going to get there. You're never going to know if it hits until the rubber meets the road, until you get it out there. And your audience is going to tell you if it resonates or not. Because I just had this experience with one of my clients just now where we literally changed one word on the page from speed up the metabolism to improve your metabolism. And that turned the conversion from 10% to 46%. Like, that's a big deal. Now, originally, I thought that speed up the metabolism was going to resonate. Yep. But you're not really going to know until you get the actual data. So that's why it's really important for me to get that data, and why I was always guessing, testing, and assessing, which is what I live by now. And so I think that when I look back on it now, one of the biggest things, because what would happen, to be fair, is that I would put the messaging out there, and things that we thought that was awesome and was going to resonate didn't. And things that we thought were just, this thought reversal, well, I don't know if it's that important, they would take all the budget, or they would blow up, people would share it, and I would get a lot of info for that. And then we clicked and we created this 30 and 30 PDF download. And literally, I woke up one night, I went to sleep, set up my ad and said, let's just try this. And I literally woke up and had 3,000 emails.
That's insane. So hold on. I need to back up a little bit on this. So a couple of things here. We need to talk about the 30 and 30 first of all. So we're going to talk about that in 1 second. But the thing is with messaging, and I tell you guys this all the time, it's a living, breathing organism. It's something that always evolves and tests. You have to test it. And a lot of times what you think will work doesn't, and what you think won't work does. And that's the same thing with ads too. And so you never know, and you're never going to know what feels good, what people resonate with. And so what happens is it's this dance between you and what you stand for and what you want to create, and the dance of the audience and the struggling avatar, and finding that gel, finding what is working, what is connecting you guys together. But that only comes from doing the freaking dance like Beverley did. So when we talk messaging, and inside the Video 4X program, we talk messaging in different layers, and your offer is obviously one of those layers. And so just so you guys know, the offer is not your course, not your program. It's how it's presented to everyone. So you had your program, and it was a 90-day program that helps moms lose weight, essentially, correct? Mm-hmm. And so we started realizing was that 90 days overwhelmed people. It was just like, okay, this is overwhelming. It's 90 days. I can't do it. But 30 minutes for 30 days was possible. And so we started to change your offer around. Now, I don't know if we changed the offer at this point when you did the download or not, but I'm just going to tell everyone the shift that we made. So what we ended up doing from the messaging standpoint is saying, okay, you know what? It's not a 90-day program anymore. It's a 30-day program, and we're going to give you a 60-day bonus. Because I remember, Beverly, you kept saying, Brandon, it's 90 days. They have to do the 90 days. They have to. It's 90 days. And I was like, but they want 30. And so we gave them 30, and then we gave them a 60-day bonus. It's still the same modules, the same program, the same everything, but the way we presented it to them shifted and changed. And then you started running ads and to get the download of the 30 and 30, and I'll let you take the story from there of what happened.
I love that you're bringing this up, because it's actually giving me another signal. This was another sign for me that it was clear that I needed to pivot, because once you start really going deep in your messaging, you are going to start paying attention to what your audience is telling you in the way that they are telling you. so that you can use that language in the communication of the offer and in your content, right?
Okay, I need to interrupt real quick, because one of the things we talk about is not to let your audience dictate your message, but what you're referring to is saying what you want to say, doing what you want to do, but pay attention to how they respond to it and repeating that language. You're still saying what you want to say and standing up for what you want, but you might be phrasing it in language they're using, correct?
Correct. So let me just reiterate that I'm not talking about creating content based on what they're saying. That is not what I do. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying listening to how they say it, because it is not just about what you say, which is very important, but it's also about how you say it. So now I'm talking about that level of persuasion where you're going to start building instant rapport with people. So it's not about making sure that you're creating content from a place of what do they need? What do they, let me create how-to content. No, I'm talking about how you are delivering it so that you can connect with your people.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was happening was that I was not doing that. And I was creating and thinking from my audience, which were trainers, from my colleagues, from people, from my background in, studying of human biomechanics. Not from what my moms were saying, not in terms of, how they need to, what content do I need to create for them so that it speaks to them, but more so I needed to hear the way they were describing their struggles.
Right.
So that I use that in baking my offer, making sure that I'm presenting the offer to them in a way that they want it. I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
And it also goes back to like the first struggle I was saying, is because I was super attached to my offer in the sense that this is my baby and your offer is not your baby. It's not. It's just not. But I get that it feels like that when you're spending so much time into it. Your heart is in it. So I get why people feel that way, but it's not. It's really just data. Is it a yes or is it a no, really? So then what happened was that then I put that PDF download, and something else too I want to say is that when you get the messaging right, it will feel like it will have that feeling of viralness, because it can be powerful in that way. Once you get it right, once you connect, it will feel like, oh my gosh, I have 30,000 emails, or now all of a sudden I've got 400 comments on this one post. And that can happen overnight. But what's the saying that they always say? It took 10 years to become an overnight sensation. Yep. That's kind of exactly what's happening, because there's no way that I would have been able to be here today if I did not go through all those steps. It wasn't like I accidentally figured out my messaging, that I just, it just kind of, I just came up with some super powerful sentence and now all of a sudden I have 20 one-on-ones. That's not how that worked.
Right. Because there's a lot that goes into it. And, the most common experience from someone who completes the Video 4X program is usually like mind blown. I hear things like, I've never been so clear on how to communicate what it is that I do. And I'm like, great, now go put it out there. Because what they realize is, even though they're very clear and they feel empowered and they can articulate what it is they do very well and they have content to back it up, they still have to go through that exploration phase that you went through to just see, is it totally in alignment of the people? Am I using the right words? Is the offer still aligned with the message? And then they have to let it evolve and grow and all of that stuff. So although it makes me really happy to hear how excited they are and how powerful their content is, I just know, great, now you got to go through phase 2, which is what you went through. But as soon as you kind of go through phase 2, you can have those results where you're like, go to sleep and you wake up and all of a sudden you have 3,000 emails in your inbox because it's now hitting. So at that stage in your story, what happened at that point?
So now we had these 3,000 emails, which was exciting and was a huge success. Like, I want to just acknowledge that we did say, great, this is success. We did it. And now the next step was, now we got to get them to convert into the sale. And that was the disconnect. And so when I look back on it now, if I could do it all over again, I would say one of the things that we forgot to do, which is something that Brandon talks about in the video 4X, which is create the desire but. The desire but method, where you literally answer the question, give them the answer to the solution, or give them the answer to the problem, but then you expose another problem. And that it's not just enough. And now we need to use that content to create demand for the next step. Yeah. And I think that when I look back on it now, I think that was something that I was missing.
It probably was. And just like the video 4X is just like anything else where it evolves over time, and like working with you guys and the first couple of people that came into the mentorship program, it's evolved to a whole nother level compared to what it is today. And we did miss that. But it's kind of funny, is like I hear you talk about your story and I look back, I'm just kind of like have a new lens of looking at it. I'm like, wow, we've kind of missed a lot. Like, I kind of just feel like you just weren't even, if we talk about alignment and moving into the direction you wanted to go with working with moms, I feel like we were just out of alignment of what you were supposed to be doing or what you really want. But we kept holding on to this thing of like, this is what we have to do and where we need to be and how we need to do it. And, I part of me thinks like, man, how did we miss that? But the other part of me is like, that was a part of the journey that we had to go through to create what you now have. And again, it's so many entrepreneurs do not get that. They don't get that the hard times, the down times, they're nothing more than gifts that are going to help you soar to levels you never even dream of when you're ready for it, when the timing is right. And that's exactly what we were experiencing. But to go back to the story, we were kind of missing this desire, but which is what we talk about in the video 4X now, which is all about give them the answer, create demand for the next step. It's always about creating demand for the next step by bringing up a problem that they're going to have to face that the next step will solve. So you kept at it for a while and you're making some money. You were doing pretty well with it.
Yeah. It wasn't like and I did have my clients, like it wasn't like it was nothing. But listen, I mean, my husband and I are just reflecting on this. Last summer, a year ago, we literally got to a place in Ohio. When we were in Ohio, we went to a family trip in Michigan, and it was 1 a.m. We were driving from Michigan back to New York, and my husband's like, I don't know if we're going to have enough room on the credit card to get gas. And I was like, do it anyway? Right? We got home, by the way, for the record. We got home. And so it's just, and now when I look back on it, we're just like nowhere near that anymore, near that type of like that panic. And it just, for the record, that had to come first before any of the revenue came, right? That I had to find that comfort, that peace, that alignment. And when I was going through all that stress, and at the time, like that rushing sensation and feeling, which by the way is my nature, and I still have to combat it and recognize I'm at the right place, I'm at the right time, it's fine, everything is fine. But people always say you need to get into alignment, and I would hear that and think, what does that mean? How do you even know if you're in alignment?
Yeah.
And so I just want to share. So if anyone who is like me and feels like, how do I know if I'm in alignment? Because really I'm stubborn and relentless and I make a decision and then I'm going to make it happen at any cost.
Right.
When I look back on it now, and I look back at my experience from this 30,000 view that we're talking about it now, and I'm essentially looking at it from how I would look at a client, I can see all of the places and all of the areas of opportunity that I could have created, could have changed, could have tried this on, and it just started coming to me easily. But back then I couldn't think of it because I was in the trenches, because I was in that state of panic, because I wasn't in alignment.
Yeah. And alignment's one of those funny things where it's one of those things where you're like, how do you get there? And you're like, I don't know. I just did it. But you know it when you're in it. It's when it flows and it's easy. But I also think there's lessons that need to be learned before you can even get into alignment.
100%. 100%. Because if I didn't go through any of that, right? If I didn't go through any of that, I wouldn't have been able to learn from it, to know what to do next. Because again, you can't figure out you always say you can't learn how to ride a bike by reading a book on riding a bike. You have to get on a bike. You have to fall. This is why, for any of you who have children, this is why I love looking at my kids growing up, because I watch them. Like, I have a video of Abby trying to learn how to walk. And she gets up and she falls down, and she gets up and she falls down, and she gets up and she falls down, until one day she just all of a sudden starts walking and then is unconsciously competent in walking. Could you imagine what anyone would do if they just said, I fell down when I was trying to walk, and that must mean I'm never going to walk again? Like, they don't. They just keep getting up and they keep trying. Children are so powerful in that way, that if I just watch them, I learn so much from them, and I recognize, I need to think and be more like that.
Well, imagine too, if you take that scenario you just talked about and you applied it to you, I'm talking to you listening, whoever's listening to this podcast. If you applied that to your own business, how many times have you failed with Facebook ads and you're like, Facebook ads, they don't work, and blah, blah, and then you don't try it until it just works, or like, the webinar didn't work, and blah, 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 blah. And then you just don't do it to get to the point where you know it. And one of the reasons why I love Beverly's story is that I believe to my core that these lessons and these things are a necessary 100% to business, but to messaging as well. You will not have effective messaging and effective content if you don't go through these moments. Do you guys want to know why I connect with you so well? Because I was you. I went through the problems. I understand the problems. I can speak to those problems. And the only reason is because I know them and I didn't whine about it. Well, I might have whined about it, but I still did it anyway. I did it again anyways, because I don't know. Back then I was a different type of person, but it's a necessary part. So Beverly, what I want to do is I want to move to the moment everything kind of shifted. You've learned your lessons. You understood messaging and how it works. You put a ton of stuff out there, but then you decided to make a pivot. And I'll let you talk about what that pivot is and how it came up. But I also know there was some resistance around that pivot. So at this point in the story, how did this pivot to where you are today come up?
Great. Okay. So the reason, and the number one reason that I was having this pivot or resistance to the pivot, I'll say, was because I am stubborn, in the sense that I wanted the success in the way that I wanted it. And for no other reason now, when I look back on it, but to prove to myself that I deserved what I wanted because I had done it a certain way. That was the only reason when I look back on it. Yep. My husband would say to me for long periods of time, he would say, Beverly, you haven't been a personal trainer for so long. Why is this so important to you? And I couldn't answer that question. It is, okay? You have to accept it. I've said it's important. That's it. So that was one of the biggest, reasons for pivoting. And I think that two things were happening, and I'll give you the two moments of when I decided to okay, enough is enough. I'm going to pivot. But I was also doing a lot of personal development stuff on the side and while I'm going through that. And what I mean, or while I'm going through this process, and what I mean is that I shared on the podcast, listen, I was in this victim mentality, and I felt like I was feeling stubborn and all those things. I recognize that now because of the work I was doing on myself. I didn't know that I was in victim mentality mode. Most people don't know that they are suffering or choosing to suffer when they're in the middle of it.
Right.
So I was doing that work and recognizing, uncovering like what is in my way, what is preventing me from getting what I want, because I know, and I have always operated from, my success is inevitable. The only way it's not going to work is if I quit. I'm just going to figure it out. And so I kept working on that personally. So I'm uncovering those things. I'm trying, and I was getting really, working on my detachment, because I talked about that also in this interview, is that, I recognized all these places that I was detached. That was work to come to that realization. I didn't just be like, okay, I'm attached, let's keep going, let's just keep being attached, right? That was work to get there, to recognize that. And so what happened was, because
when you say attached, you were attached to helping moms still, right? You were attached to like making that successful.
Yeah, I'm attached to helping moms, but I was also attached to the outcomes. Like I was, I need to make X amount of money. I need to make that 5K a month. I was attached to that way. I was attached to, I'm doing the webinar the right way and I'm getting 0 conversions. So like I was attached to outcomes, and I was also attached to the messaging in how I was saying it.
Got it.
I had done all this messaging work. I thought, I'm doing it right. Why is it not working? This is what I wanted to say. So that speaks to a little bit about what we were saying, is that, messaging is also, persuasion is in there as well. And you have to be able to do that too.
Yep.
So, it's a whole bunch of layers that depend on one another, but you're not going to get there until you try it, until you do the first step and all that. So what happened was, I had 2 things happen. While I'm working on all of that in the background, I had heard a call where one of our mentors, James Wedmore, had said, listen, you need to be responsible in your business. And if you are not generating revenue, you are not being responsible, was what he said. And I listened to it and I said, okay, Beverley, enough is enough. You have to do whatever it takes to pull in your survival revenue. And so I sat down and I got serious and said, this is what I need to bring on a monthly basis in order to pay the bills.
Yep.
And then literally the second I said that, I literally think it was the same day, one of my really good friends called and he said, hey, and this was like he was one of my good friends, but he was also he was the person that taught me everything I know about strength and conditioning. I was his assistant fitness manager. I was under him. He trained me. He taught me the science of training. I looked up to him. He was one of my trainer mentors, and he called me and he said, hey, how do you do this? And it was just like a simple conversation of like, oh, I'm thinking of starting this group mentorship. How would I do that? And I said, oh, you just do blah, blah, blah. And when I told him, he said, like blank stare, looking at me, blink, blink. Could you just help me with that? And I said, sure. And so the second I said, sure, then it was just a snowball effect, essentially. It was like I created this small snowball and then I pushed it down the mountain, and momentum and alignment all of a sudden just started happening. And then what happened, and the reason why within 7 days that I all of a sudden booked, I think it was 10 one-on-ones, was because I had helped him, literally, I helped him create, I think it was 3 posts online, and said, here, let's just test it and see how warm your audience is. And he brought a group of 40 people into his membership beta.
Wow.
And then he said, okay. And then he recommended me. And so all of a sudden I had 4 phone calls, the next day that was like, hey, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? And I said, okay, well, James said to be responsible.
So we blame all of this is James's fault, or James is doing. Well, that's amazing. And that's kind of like what our experience was when we first started the Video Forex Effect. Was kind of like we did this thing and we communicated in a way where people were just like, hold on, hold up. And then they would pay attention to it, and it was working, and it was what they needed. And then it was like word of mouth. It was like we couldn't keep up fast enough with the people, especially in the service. And that's something we talk about like with messaging and offers is all about the uniqueness. What is that unique thing that you know how to do? How do we brand it to yourself? And then if it's positioned in a way where it's something that people have never heard about or seen before and that they need, it's like putting gasoline on a fire. And that's what you were experiencing. So what happened after that?
So then, it was also funny too, because I will also go back to the alignment thing, because then I got asked to be on a guest podcast with Tracy, who's also a part of our mentorship. Mm-hmm. And she was having me tell my story. And as I was telling my story, even from I was a musical theater artist and how I went from musical theater and transitioned into training and transitioned into fitness manager. And when you start to see and tell that story, it was all of a sudden like, oh, the writing's been on the wall the whole time.
Yeah.
I am just taking what I was doing in person and putting it online. That's exactly what I'm doing. And so to me, that was just so clear. That it was just so clear that this is what I was needed to be doing. And then the second thing that happened, which is a good thing, because most people, when they're like, I need to start over, it gets easy to feel like, oh, there's all that work. I'm going to have to do it all over again. But I actually didn't feel like that. Yeah. I felt really excited because I had already done it. And I already knew what I was going to have to do. And so those moments so it almost felt like going viral happened faster, but it didn't happen faster because of any other reason other than I had already done it. I'd already done the process. I knew what to look for.
Yep.
I nothing that had happened in the past was for naught. It was exactly what I needed to get to here, because now I have clients that are asking me, well, have you done this? Have you done that? Yes, actually, I've done and tried it all.
Yeah, exactly. It gave you the experience to be able to serve people on a deeper level. The problems, the downs, the quote unquote failures are all just gifts that give you the experience to help other people. And I tell people this all the time, like you should be your struggling avatar. Like if you are giving someone a transformation that you have likely gone through yourself. So don't make up this illusion of an avatar. You are the avatar. Think about you and your experience and all those moments. Again, it's called the struggling avatar. So if you were the struggling avatar, it means you were struggling, but those struggles now give you the experience or the knowing on how to serve people on a different level. And just as a little note, another reason why you didn't go, oh, all that work, is because that's a victim. That's what a victim does. And you've done a lot of work on not being the victim and being full responsibility, full power at all times. And that's now allowed you to kind of like go through the 4X process again, redo it all. And now you're seeing faster results because you didn't live in victimhood and sit there for a week moping, crying, whining, and complaining. You just went and you did it. And so how are things going now?
So things are going awesome now. And also too, it's one of the things that I love about the Video 4X effect, which is that it's not about getting it right. It's not about putting on this strategy and then just, it's the way to go and way to be. It's always growing. The whole process in there, I think you say it over and over, is guessing and testing, and that we live by this. We need to test it. Yeah. Because we can say until we're blue in the face that this is going to work, but we're never going to really know until we get it in front of our people and we get it in front of our ideal clients. And then if you're anything like me and you're realizing that you are putting out content and your ideal client isn't hanging out there, that's something to look for. Either it means you're not in alignment, or it means you got to go and get your content out in front of the people you want to attract.
Yeah, 100%. So now looking back at what you've created, what does like being in alignment with your offer and your message mean to you now? Does it mean something different, or you still have the same feeling on it that we talked about earlier?
No, it does mean something to me differently. I feel like it's easy. Two things. It mostly feels easier in the sense that I don't. And the reason why I'm hesitating on saying that is because I still have those moments of rushing. I still have those moments of urgency. I got to get it out and I got to get it out now, right? I think that just goes back to my brain and my neural pathways. They are there. Old habits die hard. It's not about fixing it. It's about staying in the process and continuing to work on it, acknowledging it and continuing to work on it. So I still have those moments of rushing, urgency. I got to get it out and I got to get it out now. And so I have to focus on that sometimes to just remember to take a breath and that it's going to be okay. And also the reason why looking at the self is so important is because honestly, wherever you go, there you are. So last summer, I was dealing with those feelings of, oh no, I'm not going to be able to pay down gas. And then we finally took care of all of that. But now we're looking at, okay, so should we invest more in Facebook ads? And what about the team? And what if I can't? Like, it's just new level, new devil. And so you have to look at that. And if you can't handle where you are now with 100-person audience, what makes you think you're going to be able to handle it when you have 100 million people looking at you? Right. So that's one thing that I'm always looking at and paying attention to and checking in with because I still have that now. But I have the sense of ease and I get also excited about figuring out like the puzzle.
I know it's a game.
It's a game. Again, it's fun. And when it's not fun, I'm working too hard and I need to check in with that.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I look back at my old stuff, I was doing the same thing, thinking about the puzzle of the marketing and the marketing of my piece. But now I just care more about other people's stuff and other people's processes, my clients' puzzles. I care about that, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I like doing it all the time. It's all I was thinking about then, and it's all that I'm thinking about now.
There's so many lessons in what you just said. So I think the first one, and it is like a mic drop moment when you're like, if you can't handle having 100-person audience, how do you expect to have 1,000 or 10,000? And it's so true. It's like, you might be struggling right now inside of your business, but guess what? The struggles don't stop. They just change. They're different. It's how you respond to the struggles and how it affects you is really the difference. And so I always say I could tell exactly how much money someone makes by what they perceive as a problem. And a lot of the things that a 7-figure or 8-figure entrepreneur views as a problem the things that a 6-figure or below entrepreneur thinks is a problem, they don't even come onto the radar for a 7 or 8-figure. They're like, why are we spending any time on it? It's just like, who cares? Like, let's focus on this or that or whatever. And so again, like I look back at what I was worried about when I was struggling versus the new problems that I have now. I think Brandon 5 years ago's head would have exploded with the problems that we have to deal. Like I was just telling you last week, we had a hacker come on, take over our Facebook accounts and spent $64,000 on my credit card, which by the way, I still haven't gotten refunded. Brandon back then would have probably melted in the ground and been like, I effing give up. I can't deal. Like, I'm done. I'm just done. But Brandon last week was pretty cool. Like I had my moments, but I also was just pretty cool, collected and be like, yeah, whatever. Like we'll get it figured out. It's not a big deal. And then I actually had a lot of lessons and like some really good content came out of it. I got to share my lessons and the lessons that we learned and all of that stuff. And so again, it's amazing to see you kind of like go through all that and to experience it firsthand. Cause it's one thing like as a mentor or a teacher and someone who has a program to be in there and like telling you guys this, but to see you live it, breathe it and go through it and come out the other side and be like, oh my, I now know what you're talking about. And then it's great because now you get to share all that with your peeps and your audience. It's amazing.
I'm excited too, because we're just starting. Like, this is just the start. And so that's also the part that's super excited too. And I also want to just say that even, we're talking about my story and my journey. There's no way I would have been able to do this without mentorship.
Yeah.
Without having a network. I even talked about how you learn something from being on Tracy's podcast. Well, there's no way I would have met Tracy if I didn't network. Like, we're not supposed to do this stuff alone.
Yeah.
And so that is a very important component and piece to what I call my success.
Again, another thing that I had to learn that lesson myself. And like when I started my company, I just wanted to make 10 grand a month, not have a team. I just wanted to like not talk to anybody and just go ride my bike all day, mountain bike all day long. And I remember, I think it was the first event you came to, and I was sitting, it was a room of 40 people in this small little like room in a hotel, which is a whole different story of why we were in such a small, tiny room, but that's the way it worked out. And we had a panel come up, and the panel was me, Mel Abraham, who was not invited to the event, but showed up anyways. It wasn't that he wasn't invited. For some reason, I didn't have him come as a speaker or whatever, but he came anyways to show support. James was there. Jim Fortin was there. Taylor, my brother, Jilly, who is James's integrator, all on a panel for everyone in that room, 40 people, to ask any questions they wanted for an hour and a half. Like, you're never going to get a panel that powerful of a panel in the online space with that like one-on-one attention ever. And it just hit me in that moment. I'm like, this is my crew. Like, these people that are here on this panel are here because of me, because of the relationship that we have. Yes, they want to help people, but they wouldn't be in that room if it wasn't for the relationship that I have. Like even Mel, he just came up. He figured out where it was and just showed up because he wanted to show his support. And that is my crew. Those are my people. But we all weren't at that level. When I met James, I don't think he was even at, I think he was maybe at 500,000 a year in his business. He wasn't the James Wedmore that you all know today. And I met Mel and the same thing. And when I met Jim, he was literally flying across the country selling real estate coaching packages to real estate agents. He would go into a brokerage, he would do a listing presentation, sales presentation thing, and then pitch a $1,500 like 12-week coaching program to real estate agents, and he would make 10 to 20 grand a pop. And that's literally what he did. And I was like, what the heck are you doing, man? Why are you doing this? And then now you can't do any one-on-one coaching with Jim for anything less than like $30,000 or $40,000. And he moved into that space. But the point is like Beverley, what you're saying is, you have to find the crew. You have to find your people. You have to pay for those mentors. You have to get those mentors. And I think a lot of people when they're going into a course or a program, they look so much at the cost to make the decision of what to do or not to do, or is the course going to make or break this thing for me? And they forget to look at what are the other things that happen. I can tell you guys right now, the people that I have a relationship with, like with you, Beverley, or the people that just DM me and I respond back instantly, are all people who've gone through my course, who've actually executed on the course, who got results with the course, and they become friends. And you guys want relationships with these people. That's the kind of, like, you got to network. You got to invest. You got to find the right mentors. And you find the mentor that actually cares about you, they will take the time to reply back to you and support you and guide you when you need it.
Yeah, sure. And one of the things too that I always say to my clients, right, is that if you're not investing in yourself, how can you expect your ideal client to invest in themselves? If you are not living by what you are preaching, how can you expect anyone else to do it?
Lead by example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Beverley, what's next for you? Where are you going with all of this?
Well, I'm super excited because so right now I'm tapped out in terms of my one-on-one, which is exciting because they've helped me come up with the program. So now we're just going to scale it. We're going to put that out, and that's going to come out in August. So I'm excited about it. Yeah.
I just have to tell everyone one funny story because you messaged me yesterday, and this is the power.
It's true.
Say that again.
So you can tell them it's true.
Okay. So this is the power of messaging, and this is the power of like a good offer. So I'm going on a hike yesterday, and I get this message from Beverley, and she's like, oh, like the funnel or something you were doing was a little bit broken, or you thought was broken. You had this idea of how things should be, and it didn't fit to that. So you labeled it as broken. And you're in your runway and you had this like webinar that you were going to, a paid webinar. And you're like, okay, I'm getting people to opt in for a PDF. And then as soon as they opt in, I do an upsell for, I don't know, with $27, $37 or something like that, right? Is that the price point? Yeah. So, to a paid webinar, said, hey, thanks so much for the PDF. Do you guys want to go through this training with me live? We're going to do a call like next week. It's $27, $37. And you like send me this message. You're like, oh, it's broken. It's not working. The conversion, the click-through rate, It's like, well, what are the numbers on it? And you're like, well, I broke even on my ad spend. So I'm like, okay, great. Let me get this straight. You got people to sign up for the webinar. You got a bunch of people on your list and it cost you $0. And you're like, yeah, but I wanted to profit. And it's like, oh my God, Beverley. Like, what if you scaled that out? You could have had thousands of people and it would have cost you nothing. But the beauty of that is you did that on your first or second try. Like, you didn't have to do a lot of testing. You didn't have to do a lot of stuff because you put in the work, your messaging's dialed in, you're in alignment, and you get it, you know it, right? You're in the groove with your audience. And that's the beauty of perfect messaging, which takes time to get there sometimes.
It does. But I'm really glad that you bring that point up. And I'm laughing because I definitely, when I messaged him, I was like, I know better. And I know that I'm supposed to feel better, but in this moment, I really don't. and literally, this is the first time that I've ever done this. I've broken even. I didn't go in, I haven't gone down. I've broken even. I just, I wanted it to be something different and it's not, and that's okay. But I know that and one of the other things that was happening is that I'm looking at what's happening in real time and already knowing how I can make it better while I'm going through the process. It isn't one of those things that I had to wait, look back, redo it. But the only reason that I can move at that speed is because I had done it before.
Yeah. 100%. And I love that that's a problem. Like, just so people are clear, she broke even on ad spend. She wasn't even selling the program she wanted to sell. This is like getting people on her list to warm them up so they can go into the launch. And nowadays, Beverley's problems are I'm getting people on my list for free. I'm warming people up for free. That's Beverley's biggest problem today after going through all of that and getting to knowing and figuring out her messaging. I love it, Beverley. Beverley, thanks so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Two things. One, where can people go to learn more about you?
Great. So the best place to find me, I hang out primarily on Instagram at B Simpson Fitness, and then I hang out on Facebook at B Simpson Fitness.
Cool. And the second thing is, what's one last piece of advice that you would give to anyone going through the Video 4X process, trying to figure out their messaging and their content?
Okay. Can it be like a two-part? It's going to be a two-part answer. I think the biggest takeaway that I would say is to let go of perfection and just get it out there. Do it. For lack of a better word, but seriously, just do it. And in terms of, don't worry about it getting it perfect, like making sure those thought reversals are perfect. Your audience is going to tell you, they'll give you the feedback. And then the second part would be the faster you can get away from feeling bad when things don't go your way, the faster you're going to be successful. If you can look at everything that you think and perceive to not be right or to be wrong and look for the lesson, the faster you'll be successful.
100%. I love it. Beverley, thank you so much. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.